Welcome back, folks. Welcome back to the Virginia Democratic Small Business Caucus Show live. Oh, we're working from another location, and I'm happy to see you back. Happy to see you back on February the 22nd. This is our last show, our last show of African American or Black History Month, and we're just as happy as possible to see you. Let me stop all the music. I got my technology working here. Gotta have everything working. Okay, folks. Good to see you back. Okay, wait a minute. Where's my thing here? Looks like Facebook are having a little problem, but don't worry about it. My technology is telling me there may be an issue, but you know what, folks? Welcome back. This is the Virginia Democratic Small Business Caucus Show live. We're happy to have you here. We're coming from another location today, and coming from another location today, things are a little bit off, but we're still getting it done. So I'm really happy to see you. Listen, today we're going to talk about what we always talk about, and also we're going to be something's a little different here, but it says I'm still live. So if anybody out there sees anything that looks a little peculiar, let me know. I guess I'll find out after the show. But listen, we're back and we're happy to be here to tell you, you know, this has been a very, very eventful February 2023. And that eventfulness has always been a little peculiar because there's just been so many things happening. I know in Virginia, we've been having elections. We also had an opportunity to have our first African-American woman who got elected as the first woman congressman, African-American woman from the state of Virginia, replacing the esteemed congressman who passed a few months ago, which Congressman Donald. So, you know, there's been great things, but there's also been a lot of peculiar things too. But before I get into all that, but I want to mention that first. I wanted to just say, you know, as I always start, you know, it's not over yet with this COVID thing. You know, all out there that supporting small businesses, want to be small businesses, or soon to become a small business, thank you. And thank you for tuning in to the Virginia Democratic Small Business Caucus Show. And it's important that you're out there, but it's important that you're out there taking care of yourselves and your family. So do what you need to do when it comes to this COVID thing still, getting through the end of this season and everything else, to make sure that you are doing everything you need to do to take care of yourself, whether that's a shot, whether that's a second shot, or whether it's wearing to keep yourself safe, your loved ones safe, because you back here doing what you need to do civically, taking care of things you need to do civically here in Virginia. I'm still getting something on my screen here, folks. You can't see it, that says that there's maybe an issue. One of our platforms, but I'm not going to worry about that. I'm just going to keep on moving ahead, and making sure that we do what we need to do here. So the other question, thing that I want to put on the table for today is this very interesting month, particularly, I mean, with all the concerns that are going on, particularly during African American History Month, with people trying to not only stop people from having an opportunity to teach they would like to teach, and their kids, and you know, books that are not being allowed to be read concerning African American History Month. It's interesting, and just all the things that have really happened from the, you know, for a while now. This is something that you should be concerned with. And it really kind of all comes back to what, you know, I've been talking about for the last year here, is really voting rights and what we are doing to make sure that our voting rights are protected, and that your constitutional right to about the franchise is not being interrupted. And based on what I can see, a lot of the challenges that we're having, I think a lot of them could go away if people get out there and just do what they need to do as far as getting out there and voting for the people they need to vote for and supporting the candidates that they need to support. But more importantly, making sure that they're pushing the policies forward that they believe in and they have a right as an American to put the candidate in place and get that person elected, and having an access to get that done. It all comes from voting rights. So it's important. As small business owners, the things that concern us around running our businesses and making sure that we have all the regulations as far as health is concerned, safety, air, issues concerning healthcare, issues concerning privacy, issues concerning not just privacy, but also concerning civil rights, particularly when we talk about the Voting Rights Act. When we talk about making sure that gets put back into place, this is extremely important because those issues are the same issues that we've been trying to get done for a while now. And you know what? I'm not tired. I hope you're not tired. Maybe a little tired today. It's been a long day, but I'm here for it, as they say. Here to make it happen and here to encourage other people to make sure that they're out there doing what they need to do as well. You know, when we're looking at things like we're talking about the George Floyd bill, we're talking about and that has to do with police reform. We're talking about the women's right to her privacy and her health care. That's out there too. A number of other bills, but how we get that done basically is voting. And when someone is trying to stop you from voting, they're actually trying to stop that from happening. So every week I get on here and I go through the same thing. But you know, it's the long game, folks. We're here for the long game. And one step closer, getting Jennifer McClellan elected from Virginia to take esteemed congressman who's gone on to transition, Donald McEachin, was a big deal, a big deal. Not only did we put another good person in there, we also made a little history while we did it. So all that's important. So we're going to continue to make that history. Well, folks, here I am from an undisclosed location. I'm not at my usual location, so things are a little bit off, as I said earlier during the show. But we've had some great guests in the month of February. And I just want to thank all the people who've taken the time to come on here and talk about whatever it is that they were doing for their civic organizations last week with the Fairfax County government and their Black History Month celebration. And it was pretty cool. And also we had some other guests here. I'm trying to remember all those guests. And, you know, you get to be my age. I try to turn my head a little bit as I try to get a little help. So I can maybe just mention all the folks who've been here this month. And it was quite a few people, at least 4 different folks. Let me see who it is. Let me take a peek here. I want to make sure I give a little shout out to people, let them know we appreciate them. We had Paul Woods here and his colleague, Janita. We also had before that, what else did we have on there? As I'm looking at the names here, I know technically I shouldn't be doing that. We had Congressman Jim Moran to talk about, former Congressman Jim Moran from the 8th Congressional District to talk about his recollections of civil rights and all the great things that he's been doing in his 30-plus year career. And what else did we have? Also, you had me too talking. But you know, we got more people. So it's really been kind of interesting. But folks have been busy all year just doing these sort of things, supporting what we need to get done. You know, You know, one thing that has me a little bit concerned, and we're not going to have a guest today, but we'll have a great guest next week, is the talk about, you know, all the things that this we've been doing since the inception of this country and doing things together as one country. It's important, you know. I guess as President Obama said, you know, I don't go with a script, folks. I'm just talking from my head and my heart. Is you know, there's, you know, I think he said it best. There's no red state, there's no blue states, there's just the United States. A famous quote from President Barack Obama. And that is who we are. That is what we've been doing for a very long time, despite our challenges, despite what we had to deal with internally as well as externally, as far as people attacking the United States. We've been able to still continue forward in making what we all call a more perfect union. And that's what we're going to continue to do. And no one is going to stop the United States from doing exactly that. Looks like I'm getting some glitches too, man. When you're not at your regular location, all kind of stuff happens. That's okay. Here's what we're going to do here. I'm going to start. I'm not going to go full hour today, but I'm going to do what I do every week. You know what I'm going to talk about? That's right. I started on voting rights. It's all about voting rights. It is the fundamental portion of our democracy, voting rights. And if you don't have voting rights, you cannot move forward as a country if people don't have a right to the franchise. As I always say, even on my little promo here, and I'll put it on the screen here, voting rights, it is democracy's foundation. And we have a call to action for people to be able to make sure that they protect their voting rights and protect the United States of America from all comers, from within and from without. Now, let's go into what I do every time. I'm going to start first by calling, you know, that triple threat that we throw out there concerning civil rights. Trifecta, that trinity, and I always start with 1964, folks. That's right, 1964 is a Civil Rights Act of 1964, which prohibited discrimination on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. There's also provisions in the Civil Rights Act that forbade discrimination on the basis not only of sex, but as well as in hiring, as far as race was concerned, and in promoting and in firing people. So basically what that act did in 1964 was say, let's make sure everybody's rights are protected here in the United States. Let's make sure everybody has the right to be able to be treated the same. And not only are those rights made clear in the Constitution of the United States, they also passed a bill in 1964 to make sure that was the case for all Americans. After 1964, they said we need to take this a little further. And as I tell you every week, that is the Voting Rights Act of 1965, the act that was signed into law on August 6, 1965, by President Lyndon Baines Johnson. It outlawed discriminatory voting practices that had been adopted in many southern states as well as in the north, but mostly in the southern states after the Civil War. A lot of those practices were in place, but those things were happening also in the north as well. And they included things like, you know, voter suppression things, you know, like literacy tests as a prerequisite to voting, or polls where you have to pay to vote, or things that they're doing now, which people hear more about the voter suppression, that has to do with the lack of the number of polls in a given community. For example, if you don't have enough polls in your community, and you have to travel, you know, instead of, you know, going up the street or half a mile or whatever, you end up having to travel, you know, 5-10 miles just to be able to vote. Or other forms of voter suppression that was going on is not having enough voting machines in the location. So when you go into the polling location, if there need to be 20 machines there might only be 5. Therefore, there's this long waiting line outside that has people waiting in lines, either in the heat or in the cold. Didn't matter whether you're an elderly or an older person or a younger person. Either way, these are these techniques have been done for a long time, and what they're meant to do is to dissuade people from voting. But it hasn't dissuaded any of us. People are still getting out there and they're still voting. They don't care if there's not enough machines or they got to travel longer. Doesn't matter. People have been doing what they need to do, and we need to thank them. You need to give all the voters out there, what I call, they need to give them applause. Just clap, put your hands together for them. That's right. Put your hands together for out willing to get out there and do what they need to do to vote, no matter what the odds or what the obstacles, they get out there and do it. And I want you to understand, continue to do that until we're able to get that full Voting Rights Act put back into place. We'll talk about that in a minute, but let me tell you about what happened in 1965, which is the third leg of that trifecta, that trinity, that triple threat of what I've been talking about. It's called not Voting Rights Act. I'm sorry, I meant to bring up the 1968 Fair Housing Act of 1968. And what it did was it expanded on previous rights, which was prohibited the discrimination concerning the sale, the rental, the financing of housing based on race or religion or national origin, or was later to address handicapped families and people who were handicapped, could be a family, or either family status, because family status was an issue as well. Those people who were either, from a single family home or things of later today, people who may have a different sort of orientation as far as LGBTQIA, all those things. But guess what? What you need to be able to vote in the United States is you need to be an American citizen. You need to be at least 18 years old, and you need to be able to have free access to vote. Now, other things that different states are trying to do, I meant to go back to this voter suppression thing, is all different types of voter IDs. Either voter IDs that favor one group, maybe if you got a hunting license, fine. But if you have a college ID, that's not good enough. Or if they try to do absentee voting, which is known as voting by mail, either limiting or eliminating it altogether. And whatever they could do to make the numbers lower is voter suppression, as opposed to making lots of opportunities for people to vote, no matter whether they're voting by mail, no matter how they're getting it done, as long as it can be verified. In every case, there's been little to no voter fraud. We're talking underneath 1%. So all these laws are not designed to stop people from voting, because last election, more people voted than ever before. So if more people voted than ever before and there was negligible voter fraud, then guess what? There's no need for voter suppression. And there's no need to do all the things that they're doing to stop and making it more difficult for people to vote. Voting, access to the polls, is the foundation of the American democracy. It is the foundation of our American democracy. And if we can't vote easily and able to elect people who want to bring policies forward that are the policies that you believe in as a voter, that are guaranteed by the Constitution, then you've got a dictatorship, or you've got a theocracy, or you have a monarchy. But what you don't have is a representative democracy, which is what the United States Constitution is all about. Okay, so let me move on and tell you what I tell you every week, and I'm going to go there again. I'm going to tell you there's some bills out there that you can that you should be looking for that were passed by the House of Representatives, and that bill is the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, which was passed. And what that act does, it puts back into place the pre-clearance portion of the Voting Rights Act. And specifically, the pre-clearance portion is the portion of the bill that says before any changes to voting rules, it has to, one, go through the Department of Justice, and it also has to happen at least 180 days before any election. You just can't change things like that. And also what that bill does, it modernizes the Voting Rights Act formula for determining discrimination in states and localities. It also gives government more authority to send federal observers in to monitor jurisdictions for potential risk of discrimination at the polls during voting. All these things are very important. So John Lewis, just as you know before, if you don't remember who John Lewis is, this is the gentleman here at the Edmund Pettus Bridge when they were, he almost died there, hit in his head and almost bled to death on the Edmund Pettus Bridge as they tried to write a March for Voting Rights Act. They ultimately ended up coming back with even more people, and this time with Martin Luther King Jr., amongst other people, Ralph Abernathy, and a lot of other supporters from across the communities, from all different constituents and of all races, all colors, basically saying, you're not going to stop us from voting. We're going to get this voting rights bill passed. And that's what we need to be doing now. Let me tell you about the other bill that got passed, and then I'll tell you what you can do, what that call to action is. First, I want to tell you about the For the People Act of 2021. Now, this even expanded voting rights even more so. This bill was passed in the House of Representatives. Basically, what it did was expanded access to voting by having automatic same-day voter registration nationwide, 2 weeks of early voting for all voters, a ban on purging the polls. And you're saying, well, what is purging the polls? Well, purging the polls means you go in to vote one time, and for whatever reason, the next election comes around and you don't vote, and you come back to the election after that, all of a sudden your name's not on polls. You're like, hey, what's up? And they don't allow you to vote. Or they do what's known as a provisional vote, which will ultimately get counted, but it is another way of deterring people from voting, because a lot of times people will get upset and just not vote at all if some sort of special thing has to be done. And sometimes maybe those votes are not always treated. Well, they're not treated the same because they get counted after an election. So it is different. A lot of people don't like that and shouldn't have to go through that just because somebody decided to, for whatever reason, arbitrary reason, to take their name off of the voting polls. Also, let me go to the right one here. HR 1 is what I'm talking about. The For the People Act also restores the full protections of the Voting Rights Act, which was get this correct, decimated by the Supreme Court in 2013. You're probably saying, what's Mark talking about? What I'm talking about is the pre-clearance portion of the Voting Rights Act. Basically, what the Supreme Court did in 2013 was to take that piece of the Voting Rights Act away and said, well, there's no more discrimination or problems like that in the country. Now, you all know that is not true. You living here like I'm living here. You see all the craziness that is going on, and people doing more than 443 voter suppression laws got passed in more than 45 states or 43 states. Just crazy, right? And that happened as soon as in 2013, when the Supreme Court took out that pre-clearance portion. People who want to do voter suppression went right back to what they were doing prior to 1965. And the Supreme Court said, well, if you think we're wrong, just pass another law and put it back in. And basically we're saying, thank you very much. That's exactly what HR 1 and HR 4 does. It puts the pre-clearance portion back into federal law. So all 50 states and all U.S. territories that are allowed to vote for in federal elections have those same protections once again. But let me finish telling you also what HR 1 does. It does a couple of other things too. It has finance reforms like banning foreign money loopholes, election security, and things like independent commissions that prevent gerrymandering. You're probably saying, gerrymandering? What's that? Well, you probably heard it before because it's a pretty unique, funny sounding word. But what gerrymandering is where politicians pick the voters and make those really crazy looking districts where they circle all the people who are going to vote for them and exclude all the people who won't vote for them, or they take groups of voters and try to stuff them all into one particular district where they ought to have 2 congressmen or 3. They end up having 1 congressman or no congressman. It is really just a way of manipulating congressional districts for advantage, and that sort of thing shouldn't happen. It ought to just be based on the census, where people live, and that's how they usually do it. That's how it should be done objectively, but that's not what's been happening. And finally, I want to tell you about in HR 1 is it provides grants to states to replace voting machines, and it also additional processes for auditing and securing elections. Now, in Virginia and a lot of other states, you have complete access to voting. Complete. Matter of fact, the Democrats in Virginia passed such great and easy access laws for people to vote, they ended up getting themselves voted out of office. Hey, but that's the way it is. We should have gotten out more voters. It wasn't because they were somehow being prevented. You just got to make sure you're motivating your potential folks who want to vote for you and making sure that they get to the polls. And whoever does that the best and has the best policies and ideas will win, minus any sort of voter suppression, minus any sort of other things that can even happen after people vote. Because there was also attempts by people to not only say if you got through all those obstacles, they were then going to say, well, we now have another law that says, well, if we don't like the outcome of the number, regardless of who got the most votes, we'll just turn it over to our local state office and we'll just put in who we want to put in. Well, as soon as even talk like that is things that are not American and are not valid with the Constitution, are not valid with how a democracy works. Democracies work based upon people voting for a particular candidate. Whoever gets the most votes wins. Now, I know it's a little different with the presidential election, but in a sense, we're talking about the electoral commerce. I won't get down to the weeds on that, but I will say this. If you do have enough votes to make sure you get the lion's share of electoral votes, that's, again, part of that philosophy. But people say, well, what do you need electoral college for? Just let people vote. Whoever gets the most votes, forget about that. That's a discussion for another day. Right now, we're concentrating on voting rights. So I'm going to tell you, like I tell you every week when I come here, there's something that you can do. There is a call to action for voting rights. A call to action. There is something you can do. And there's a fantastic tool that's out there. It's called, it's an activism app, and the name of the tool is called 5 Calls. You can make your voice heard. Calling your congressman is the most effective way to influence the policy. They've been making over a couple of million calls. But what's really so cool about the tool is once you download it to your phone and you put your information in it, it automatically tells you who your congressman is and who's your state and local rep, all that information. It lists all the issues, and all you got to go is click, 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 and boom, it makes the call. Excuse me. And all you have to do is download it, put in the information, and then you get to talk to your congressperson or their representative, there's somebody in their office, and say, hey, I know about John Lewis Voting Rights Act. I want you to support that act and pass it. When I say your congressman, that is your senator and your House of Representative person who represents you locally. And then you say, oh, and by the way, I also know about the People Act, which was passed in the House of Representatives. I want you to support that, or there'll be consequences. And get it done, and make sure you hold your elected representatives' feet to the fire to make sure that they support voting rights for you and for all Americans in this country by putting those laws back into place. We shouldn't really need those laws, but apparently, as I've explained, we do. So you need to go and make sure you take the time to do that. That's the least you can do. Now there's other stuff. I mean, you can get out there and work for a candidate. You can give money. You can get out there and be an activist. You can do all kind of stuff to make sure you're making sure that you're getting your neighbors involved and doing whatever you need to do to make sure that voting rights are not in any way stopped for everybody. And it's not a Democratic thing. It's not a Republican thing. It is an American thing. It is a constitutional thing. Read the Constitution of the United States, or at least the part that talks about voting, and you will understand how it's worked for more than 50 some years. We haven't always done it right, but we definitely know how not to do it and what we've learned to have in place to make sure all Americans have a right to vote. So last thing I want to tell you about that app is it's available on Android or Google phones. It's available on iPhone by Apple. So, everybody, there's no reason, and those are free apps. So just get out there and get it done. So usually about this time, about 7:30 is when I usually bring on a guest. But I am the guest this time. And I just want to thank people for, getting out there and supporting their communities. Because there's a lot of people out there that are trying to do crazy things that we know are just completely dumb and stupid. Okay? This country is as great as it is because we all work together. We all support each other as much as we can across all gender and racial lines. When it comes to protecting this country and protecting democratic ideals, people have been giving the blood of their ancestors here in this country, and as well as the folks who are living now and supporting the ideals of the United States of America. That is why I want to make sure that that continues to be the case. Some people are trying to break us apart, right? They're trying to, pit one group against the other group and say, hey, these people are not good because they don't agree with everything you agree with. That's crazy. I don't even agree with everything what my wife says. Or they're saying, let's separate and, listen. You guys know about all those little small countries everywhere out there. They're great countries, but one of the things that the United States is really known for is because it's such a vast country, and with the combined effort of all 50 states and all 330 million plus Americans, we were able to do some fantastic things. But we do it together. I don't agree with everything everyone does, but I know one thing I disagree with is anyone who is trying to dissolve or somehow pit Americans against Americans. It's not good. It's not good. I don't care, what race you are, what gender you are, or whatever, your particular ideology is. I mean, if you believe that that makes sense and you really don't need other Americans, you got options. But trying to get everybody else not to work together, to be together, one nation, under God, indivisible. Anybody who's against that doesn't make sense. Anybody who wants to ban books, burn books, well, you guys know what happened in Germany. Doesn't make sense. World War II. It's an easy one to follow. Don't let people talk you into doing things that don't make a whole lot of sense. Make sure you're supporting your neighbors, your friends, folks that you love across the country, across ideologies, to make sure that everybody has the same rights. And we work it out in the end. I know making hamburgers not too cool to watch it get made. If you ever seen a hamburger get made, you'll probably stop eating hamburgers and hot dogs. But you know what? Voting rights are extremely important. Take the time to talk to your congressperson and make sure you get the voting rights. So folks, this is our last broadcast for the month of February for African American History Month. We've had on some great folks from across different areas, and I want to thank you. And I want you to get out there and do what I've asked you to do, because it's in your own best interest, and it'll be fun too. I like to vote. I like getting out there and supporting candidates that want to go get positive things done for Americans. I want to get rid of student loan debt. You know, I want to get rid of any sort of reform, any sort of things that is going to prevent people's from enjoying their civil rights, or enjoying being able to have a successful business, or being able to go to college, or just sitting around doing nothing. That's your right too. That's the beautiful thing about this country. Nobody's in your business trying to tell you what to do. You know, a lot of people, and I'm going to stop after this, claim that they don't want to get all in your business, but if you look at what they're doing, man, they are all deep down in your soup. Don't let it happen. Vote. Voting rights is important. So make sure you're getting out there, you're standing up for your rights, doing what you need to do. I'm going to clap you in and clap you out. That's right. Let's go ahead and clap you out, because thank you very much. And let me give you a big hand. There it is. Oh, there it is. Let me turn it up some. Thank you very much for what you do in watching the Virginia Democratic Small Business Caucus show. I should let that run all the way out. I like those applause. But thank you. Thank you very much. And we'll see you next week, folks. Next week on the Virginia Democratic Small Business Caucus show. Goodbye.